Nico and Erik were back practicing with the Devils. That's a good indicator, but there's still one player dealing with an injury. And also, let's talk about the quote-unquote goaltending issue for the Devils surrounding Akira Schmid and Vitek Vanecek. And what are some of my quick thoughts going into the matchup versus the Montreal Canadiens? We have a lot to break down in today's episode of Locked On Devils. Buckle up, everybody.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Elliott scores! Oh, Stevens stepped up, nailed him. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here on Locked On Network. I'm your host, college hockey plug-and-play announcer, Dell's Ride for Pucks and Pitchforks, and also part-time credential media member, Trey Matthews. Okay, when this episode goes live, it's officially game day for the New Jersey Devils. They are traveling across the border for the first time this season. They are taking on the Montreal Canadiens. So in today's episode, in the first segment, I have some good news, more good news, but unfortunately some bad news in regards to the Devils injury update. And then in the second segment, we're going to talk about the quote-unquote goaltending issues that the Devils are facing because Vitek Vanecek and Akira Schmid, both of them have a save percentage under 900 and a goals against average above 3. And then to round things off, courtesy of the Devils PR team, we're going to look at some of the main talking points for the Devils going into their matchup against the Canadiens. And I think this is the perfect opportunity for the Devils to dominate a team from start to finish, especially with the Canadiens losing one of their big name players and being in the bottom tier for a lot of key categories. But that's to round things off to close out today's episode. Let's talk about the injury updates for the Devils. So in yesterday's special Monday episode, I talked about Nico Hischier and the possibility of him suiting up in practice once more for the Devils on Monday, because it was reported by Elliotte Friedman over the weekend that despite missing one of the more recent practices for the Devils, Hischier was going to be fine and he was going to be in full contact with the Devils on Monday. And lo and behold, he was in full uniform. He was not wearing a no contact jersey. And the same can be said for Erik Haula. Both of them were dealing with upper body injuries. We don't really know the extent of Haula's injury. He just said there was just a few bumps and bruises. He didn't really elaborate on it. But for Hischier, we don't really know when he got injured in the Islanders matchup. We can only really make an educated guess. And a lot of people are pinpointing that collision he had with Ryan Pulock in the corner wasn't really a dirty play. It was just more of a hard-nosed type of hockey play that unfortunately Hischier just got at the short end of the stick because Pulock is a big guy. But to make things even more confusing, Hischier ended up finishing off the rest of the second period, but the third period is when he didn't appear on the bench for the Devils. So we really don't know when Hischier got injured. We can only make an educated guess, but it's nice to see that both Hischier and Haula are back practicing for the Devils. Now, Haula had the chance to speak with the media recently, and he spoke on what injury he was sort of dealing with and why he didn't suit up in the game against the Islanders. Check it out.
Is there, are you able to reveal at all what you were kind of dealing with, and is there any lingering kind of pain at all?
Well, I mean, some bumps and bruises here and there. Lingering, I mean, it is what it is.
Was it something that, last week was the perfect time to step back because you can take a week and only miss a game? Was that part of what factored into why?
No, I was unable to play on Friday and unable to practice as well leading up to it. So I'm a true believer at this point, and I'm sure that everyone would agree that you need a full practice before you play, when you have something going on. And so that was the goal, is to practice Monday, feel good, and then hop in their game on Tuesday.
Yeah, he wasn't really going into much detail. Like I said, it was just a few bumps and bruises. And I think at this point in the year, it's just better to be safe than sorry. And I think the same could be said for Hischier, which is, I don't know the extent of the injury. Like I said, Hischier was able to finish off the rest of period number 2. No one was really batting an eye. No one was really highlighting it on the broadcast. And then for Haula, we just knew he was dealing with some nagging sort of injury because it occurred during preseason and training camp as well. But he was fine for the most part, but it's early in the season. You don't want to push the limits on anything. And like I said, it's just better to have both of them in the lineup because Haula is a key depth piece for the Devils, and Hischier is obviously one of the Devils' star players. So glad to see that both of them were back practicing for the Devils, and I can't wait to see both of them in the lineup against the Canadiens. But let's talk about some bad news because one of the players that I talked about in a more recent episode was Tomas Nosek. It was reported that he was walking around in a boot. He was dealing with a lower body injury. And unfortunately, he is now on the injured reserve list. And the Devils, in a corresponding move, brought up Cal Foote. Now, Cal is the older brother of Nolan Foote, who is also dealing with an injury in Utica. So it's nice that we have two Foote brothers in the Devils organization, both sons of Adam Foote, who is a well-known Colorado Avalanche player. But digressing a little bit, obviously, Cal Foote is a defenseman. It's going to be a little hard for him to make a name for himself. He's more as a collateral because he's being used as a replacement for Tomas Nosek. But I want to provide some love towards Cal because we know about his brother Nolan, but let's highlight his older brother. So according to Elite Prospects, here's what they had to say in regards to Cal. They said, an incredible tough defenseman to be in the defensive zone who is only going to get better. Foote is a physically gifted defender who is consistently tasked with and does an excellent job of shutting down the top attackers. Now, it's worth mentioning that Foote does have some previous experience playing on a Stanley caliber team because he was a part of that Tampa Bay Lightning team that won the Stanley Cup back in 2021. However, he was not credited with it, but he did appear in a few regular season games. So he does have that under his belt. He has more experience than a lot of the other Devils prospects or Utica type players. So that's something to definitely take note of. Now, Foote recently spoke with the media post-Devils practice, basically describing his game and what he wants to bring to the table. Here's what he had to say.
Your start down at the AHL level?
It was honestly, it was all right. Over a team aspect, wasn't too happy. We'd like to get more wins, but for me personally, to try to get up here as fast as I could was the mindset, and I'm pretty happy and I'm excited to be here.
What do you want to prove with this call-up?
Just have a positive mindset. Get in a game, get an opportunity. Play my game, give them no reason to take me out. So if you get an opportunity, just take it and try to do my best.
How would you describe your game?
Hard, physical, hard to play against. Take care of my own end first, and then if I get a chance to add to the offense, like to do that, but two-way, hard to play against.
I like the confidence from Cal, but if we're being realistic here, he's not really going to be given a chance to thrive, especially being a defenseman. If Shimon the Mets wasn't really going to be given a chance to showcase his skill set, which is why he was sent down to Utica to begin the year, then I don't really anticipate the same thing happening for Cal, especially since Tomas Nosek is a forward and Cal is a defenseman. So when we're looking at the Devils defensemen, Dougie Hamilton, Jonas Siegenthaler, John Marino, Luke Hughes, Kevin Ball, and Brendan Smith, I don't really know where you would slide Cal in that regards, because if Colin Miller wasn't being given a chance to crack the lineup, I don't think Cal's going to be given that chance either. Once again, he's just used as a replacement since Tomas Nosek is now on the injured reserve list, but that means Nosek is going to miss some amount of time. So we'll see what happens if Cal is able to crack into the lineup. I don't really anticipate for him to do so in the near future, but if he does, I'm not really expecting much, but hopefully he does prove me wrong. But those are just my honest expectations, especially since he's just being used to replace an injured player. But those are your injury updates for the Devils, and it's nothing really to write home about. Tomas Nosek, I do like him because I think he does the things that Michael McLeod is capable of doing. So dealing with a lower body injury, and I'll give you guys an update once I get more information. Okay, let's talk about the Devils' quote-unquote goaltending issues, because Akira Schmid and Vitek Vanecek, they're not really off to such hot starts because both of them have a goals against average above 3, and both of them have a save percentage under 900. So when we look at Vitek Vanecek, he has appeared in 2 games. He has a record of 1-1. He has a goals against average of 3.62 and a save percentage of 892. And then when looking at the other side of things for Akira Schmid, not really all that much better. So Schmid has appeared in 2 games himself. He has a record of 1-0-1. Remember, he started in that game against the Arizona Coyotes, the one that went into a shootout. He has a save percentage of .892 and a goals against average of 3.3. So the thing is, a lot of people are quick to point the finger at both Schmid and Vanecek and basically say that the Devils now have a goaltending issue once more. They're not really all that good. They're not doing this. They're not doing that. Well, I'm here to pump the brakes on that a little bit because I've been saying it in the past few episodes, which is you can't really put all the blame on Vanecek and Schmid, and that's something that Lindy Ruff has been preaching about. So all the times I've had the chance to speak with Ruff, he never really throws his goaltenders under the bus because you can't really put all the blame on your netminders. So my fellow writer over at Pucks and Pitchforks, Nick Villano, put out an interesting article. I'll leave a link to it in the description if you want to hear his full thoughts on the matter. But he talked about the defense out in front of both Schmid and Vanecek, and it's something I've talked about on the show, but Nick provided an interesting stat. So he said, the defense definitely hasn't looked like it did last season. John Marino has had his struggles to start. Luke Hughes is making the mistakes we all pretty much expected. Brendan Smith has been in the lineup every game, and that's gone as expected. They've given up 11 high danger chances per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. That's in the bottom half of the league. So once again, the defense out in front of both Vanecek and Schmid just aren't doing them any favors, which is why you see the Devils winning against the Islanders 5-4. And like I said in the previous episode, it wasn't really their best showing. Like, yes, I commend them for answering on back and not falling behind by a decent amount and then trying to mount a comeback when it's too little too late. But at the same time, it's just like 5-4. That really can't happen if you really want to become a top-notch contending team. Now, if I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. I know you guys are getting tired of it. The Devils are not really off to their best start of the season. I hope that can change against the Montreal Canadiens. But the one thing I just want to say is that I don't think the Devils have a goaltending issue. I'm here to put those rumors to bed. Now, I didn't really talk about it during the course of the summer, so I figured we talk about it now. So a lot of people are wondering, who should be the main go-to goalie for the Devils? Because once again, it seems like they're trying to juggle between Schmid and Vanecek, and the Devils don't really have a third-string goalie because last year you had Blackwood added to that rotation as well. So my thing for Vitek Vanecek is that we always knew that he was good, and there was no secret to it. Like when he was playing for the Washington Capitals, his numbers were pretty solid. But the problem that Vanecek encountered every single season was that he wasn't really the same goalie during the playoffs. And when the Devils obtained him during the second day of the draft, I was just like, here's a huge X factor that I have for Vanecek, which is, can he perform well during the playoffs? Now, at the time, the Devils weren't really projected to be a playoff team. So I was like, we'll crawl before we walk, but that's something to take into consideration. Unfortunately, come playoff time, Vanecek was anything but spectacular in both series against the Rangers and the Hurricanes. So for the time being, Vanecek's main focus should be to do what he did last season, which is continue to make those grade A saves, because we saw it on full display against the Detroit Red Wings when he was really keeping the Devils in the game throughout the entire 60 of the matchup. And who was helping him out? It was Jack Hughes taking over in period 2. So I think Vanecek can continue to do that. And once again, I think he can still rack up a decent amount of wins and just help the Devils be that top-notch team in the Metro. Now, as for Akira Schmid, here's my main issue. Yes, he's very young. Yes, he has a lot of promise. He has a lot of upside, and I'm really excited to see what he could do a few years from now. But I just want to pump the brakes on Schmid for right now. So I'm not saying he's not capable of being a starter. I'm not saying that at all. But let's not put too much pressure on him. Yes, he performed really well in round 1 against the Rangers, and that's where he solidified himself to the hockey world. But the problem I'm having with the Devils and their goaltending development, there's been a couple times, hint, Corey Schneider and Mackenzie Blackwood, where they're young goalies. They had a lot of pressure on their shoulders. They were overworked, and as a result, both of them dealt with injury. And even when they were doing well, unfortunately, it was all downhill from there. I don't want the same fate to happen with Akira Schmid. So when people are pushing for him to be the full-fledged starting goaltender for the Devils, I'm just like, he is capable of doing that, but why rush it? You already have a good goalie in Vitek Vanecek. And that's the main takeaway I want from this segment, which is both Vanecek and Schmid are good. Let's not compete them against one another. I think Vanecek should still be the go-to guy for the Devils because he has the most experience, and I think he has proven himself to be a good goalie. Yes, the playoffs didn't go all that well, but a lot of players on the Devils roster didn't really have all that good playoff outings. I think it's unfair to use that against Vanecek. So Dougie Hamilton, he didn't exactly perform all that well against the Hurricanes, albeit he was dealing with injury, but still, people are quick to forgive Hamilton. A lot of other Devils players got off to slow starts during the playoffs. Like Jesper Bratt is off to a fantastic start to open up the season, and we saw it during preseason as well. He didn't really have a good showing in the playoffs, but people are quick to forgive him. So I think the same needs to be said for Vitek Vanecek. And also, I remember when Christy Flannery of the Hockey News appeared on my show over the summer, and I asked her, who is your unsung hero? And she said Vitek Vanecek, and she even wrote an article about her appearance on my show and why she chose Vanecek. I'll leave a link to that article in the description as well. I loved it. Obviously, thank you for the shout out, Christy, on your article. I greatly appreciate that. But digressing a little bit, the main takeaway that Christy had was that Vitek Vanecek is good, and the Devils don't have the season that they have without him in net. So I think Vanecek is going to be just fine. And then for Schmid, lots of potential. Really excited to see what he could do. We rave about his long legs and how he's basically like a stork out there in the net. No disrespect to Eddie Lack, but that was just the first thing that just came to my mind. So Eddie Lack is a friend of the show, former Devil, but digressing a little bit. The one thing I can just say is that Schmid has a lot of potential, but I just don't want him to have the same fate that some other young goaltenders had for the Devils, which is too much burden, too much responsibility, gets injured, never really the same, and is never consistent from here on out. So the Devils do not have a goaltending problem. Their defense has been a problem. Jonas Siegenthaler, Dougie Hamilton have been just fine. But like I said, John Marino, not really all that good for right now. And that's why he was benched against the Panthers alongside with Meyer and Lazar. Or Luke Hughes, he's making some of those rookie mistakes, and I thought he kind of cleaned up his game during the playoffs, but unfortunately, we're not really seeing that all that consistently right now, but I'm sure he'll work it out, and like his brother Jack said, Hughes is going to be a different player a few months from now, so I'm going to be very patient with Luke. And then for Kevin Ball, I think it's safe to say he performed a little better during the preseason, but nothing egregious. And then for Brendan Smith, it's just like, again, I've talked about Brendan Smith enough on this show. You already know my opinions. I looked at the advanced analytics, so you be the judge for whether or not Smith should remain in the lineup. But that's all I'm going to say. And then for Colin Miller, I hope he is given a chance at some point. Obviously, he was dealing with an injury recently, but I hope that Lindy Ruff does insert him into the lineup when that time comes. But for right now, the defense has been letting Vitek and Akira down, and I'm just waiting in this game against the Montreal Canadiens, where maybe the Devils dominate from start to finish and give their netminders, whoever's in net, I presume it's going to be Vitek Vanecek, basically give them a rest for a night and just try to help them out a little bit more. So we'll talk about that momentarily. But before we continue, I want to tell you guys about eBay Motors. So I don't know how many of you know this, but I'm a huge NASCAR fan. So passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need, all the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. And now we are in the midst of fantasy football. Obviously, my team is doing somewhat decent. They could do a little bit better, but we're here to talk about sleeper and fantasy hockey. So a new NHL season brings all sorts of possibilities. Devils could win the Stanley Cup, or Jack Hughes could score 50 goals, and you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports, and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. Fans can also play daily fantasy football, basketball, baseball, college football on the Sleeper app. Entries can be made in under a minute. All you have to do is pick whether studs like Hischier, Brad, Hughes will record more or less than their Sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more in any given time. So use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. Okay, so like I said, it's game day for the New Jersey Devils as they cross the border to take on the Montreal Canadiens. So, courtesy of the Devils PR team, I'm going to read you guys some of the main things that I highlighted in the report, and I'm going to list 3 things to be on the lookout for. So the first thing is the Devils special teams. According to the Devils PR team, the Devils recorded 4 power play goals in a game for the 17th time in franchise history after the team's 5-4 overtime win versus the New York Islanders on October 20th. The last time that the team scored 4 power play goals in a game was March 1st, 2014. The most power play goals that the franchise scored in a game was 6, which was logged on February 19th, 1980, when the Devils were the Colorado Rockies versus Philadelphia in an 8-6 win. The most power play goals earned in a game for a Devils team history is 5, which New Jersey's team logged 3 times, last recorded January 22nd, 2008 at Philadelphia in a 7-3 win. Now, we know how great the Devils power play has been to open up the season, but the last game against the Islanders marked the first time this season that the Devils did not surrender a power play goal. So that's one of the things I want to highlight, which is I think the special teams are starting to improve in more ways than one, which is the penalty kill is improving for the Devils, and the Devils once again scored 4 power play goals. So I think they have some decent momentum going their way. And then when comparing the Devils' stats to the Canadian stats, when looking at some of the Devils' stats, goals against per games played, 3.5. They are 21st in the NHL. They are tied with Montreal. Goals for per games played, 3.75, which currently ranks 8th in the NHL. Save attempts per games played, 32.5, which ranks 23rd. Saves for per games played, 34, which ranks 6th. Now, on the other side of things, when looking at the Canadiens, goals against per games played, 3.5, 21st in the NHL, once again tied with New Jersey. Goals for per games played, 3.25, 12th in the NHL. Saves attempts per games played, 35, 26th in the NHL. Saves for per games played, 29, which ranks 24th in the entire league. So my thing for the Devils is that I think there's a golden opportunity for them to dominate a game from start to finish, because up to this point, the Devils have not began a game leading. So they have not been the ones to strike first and go up 1-0. So whoever's in net, because I think it's going to be Molten Ball in net for the Canadiens. So what I want to see the Devils do is pepper him. I want them to harass him. I want them to hound him. I want them to, once again, play that East-West style hockey that they are so accustomed to, because we saw PK Subban break down Jack Hughes' game-winning goal in overtime. So we see that Jack Hughes is the catalyst of the team. So he's leading the overall offensive firepower. So that's something I want to highlight, which is this game against the Canadiens, especially with them losing Kirby Dach. I think this is a good opportunity for New Jersey to try to dominate from start to finish and not try to play a game of catch-up. Now, one player that I want to highlight is Timo Meier, because in the previous game against the Islanders, Meier walked away with 2 points. Now, this is something that I was projecting based on how Lindy Ruff was rolling with the line combinations up to that point during a few of the Devils' practices, which is he was putting Meier alongside with Hughes, and we saw that work out during the playoffs, and it kind of came into full fruition once again against the Islanders, because Meier picked up a power play assist, and then he got the secondary assist on Jack Hughes' game-winning goal in OT. So one thing that Jack Hughes highlighted in his post-game press conference was that he likes Timo Meier as a player. He knows that Meier's being paid big money. He's being paid annually more than Jack, so I think he definitely has that in the back of his mind. But the one thing Jack was saying was that he wasn't going to coddle him. He wasn't going to celebrate Meier's good performance. He says Meier needs to basically consistently perform up to that sort of caliber, and I think he's capable of doing it. Because I hope I'm not jumping the gun on anything, but I think Meier is starting to regain some of that momentum, and I think he has some good things going his way because he has shown tremendous improvement, and I think you have to highlight some of his line mates, which include Jack Hughes. So that's my thing. I think Timo Meier, he's going to be my player to watch out for, because now can Meier do this like 4 out of 5 games? That's what I want to see from Meier, which is like, can you perform well on a consistent basis and show everyone why you're worth that money and why you're a huge asset to the roster? So going up against the Canadiens, that's my player to watch, Timo Meier. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section. If you're watching on YouTube, what are some of your expectations for the Devils going into this matchup versus the Canadiens? And what do you think about Cal Foote and what he could potentially bring to the roster? And I think the big talking point is like Vanecek and Schmid. Are they solid? Are they good? Do you guys have some concerns for them? Curious your guys' thoughts. So once again, if you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment down below. If you're listening on a podcast streaming service, hit me up on my personal X page app at TreyMatt4 or the show's personal X page app at Locked On Devils. As for today's episode, that's all the time I have for you. So continue to stay safe. Have a wonderful day, New Jersey. Go Devils. I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Thanks for listening once again.